Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Auckland Wooden Boat Festival Talks and Tours edition for 2025. We've had a series of discussions and conversations yesterday, day one, and also today. And we just had a 2-hour workshop in here. I'm sure you can still feel the buzz of the energy that was happening, where we talked about various issues and topics around the community boat, community vessel community, classic boat community. So we're going to continue with that conversation with the William C Daldy and preserving living history. So John Pratt has come to share that story with us this afternoon. So he's going to share the next chapter of the Daldy story, covering the challenges of maintaining heritage in a modern world. It's a lot of what the conversations have been about the last several days. And the topics include the transition from coal to biofuel, the turning a volunteer-driven hobby into a sustainable commercial operation, and ensuring ongoing maintenance to preserve the ship's legacy for future generations. So please join me in welcoming John Pratt.
If you've got any questions, just put your hand up and I'll address them as we go, because I never quite know what everyone's interested in. So the William C Daldy was commissioned by the Auckland Harbour Board in 1935. It only took 3 months to build, which is unfathomable, pardon the pun, in today's world. It sailed from Scotland in November, arrived here at the end of January, spent 6 days over at the Kalopi dock having its propellers changed, and entered service on the 6th of February 1936. So it served the Harbour Board until 1975. The issue with it really was the design of it. It had really quite poor visibility. In the days when it was commissioned, it was dealing with mainly sailing ships, which had a much better representative scale. So they felt that visibility was an issue, and they wanted to get out of the expense of maintaining steam. It needed it had a bunch of engineers looking after it. It's quite a complex vessel. It's sort of the pinnacle of steam engineering, which is how I got involved. I'm not really a sailor, not much into ships. But it's a great place to keep a couple of steam engines. So, and a lot of our volunteers come from that steam bent. We've got very few sailors aboard, which is a shame. So, William C Daldy was named after the first chairman of the Harbour Board. Today we would have had him locked up. He was a kauri miller who supplied the Harbour Board's first piles when they were starting to build wharves. So, conflict of interest all over the show. But he was also he was a great humanitarian. When Ponsonby caught fire, he started the Auckland Volunteer Fire Brigade, built 9 water stations around the city, also started South British Insurance Company. He was founding director of ASB Bank, BNZ. The guy was all over the place. And he's one of the lesser known names. So one of the things that we try and do a little bit with is actually the history of William C Daldy the man, because it's a fascinating franchise on history for people that don't care about boats. And I'm a history nerd anyway, so I needed to know. So in 1975, it was withdrawn from service. It was laying up for 18 months or so. And in 1977, the first of the Snyder tugs that replaced it still only had the same pull as this one, still only pulled 17 tonnes on the tow hook. So it was massively over-specced in its day. It's a 2,000 horsepower tug, or near enough, 1980 horsepower tug. And with a massive bollard pull for 1935, and by 1977 it wasn't really outclassed in terms of its actual capability, just the cost of running it and the whole steam thing. So here's a few facts and figures. It's a whopper. It actually looks much better on the dry dock or the slipway than it does on the water. It's got a draft of 4.5 metres, and the best parts of the hull are underwater. It actually is quite a pretty hull. But I've never liked the profile of it on the sea. It looks like it's been in an accident and sort of curved up a bit at both ends. But the dimensions are amazing. It's got 2 props, 11 foot prop, 12 foot pitch. So really aggressive pitch. At full speed, we're doing about 115 RPM and about 14 knots. So it's no racing ship, but it gets us up to Kowau Island and stuff in reasonable time. The triple expansion engines, it's never needed any of the gear that was shipped out for it. It came with a full complement of spare parts for the 30,000 pounds, and they're all still on the bulkheads where they were supplied when it shipped. So it's never actually suffered a major breakdown, and anything that has gone wrong, we normally just fix while we're sailing. So it's a massively complex machine for people that are just initiated into it. And the biggest issue that we faced is the age of our volunteers. A lot of people have been involved with this thing since it became a trust in 1978. So we're obviously getting to the end of their working life and a bit beyond. And attracting volunteers has been crucial to the success of the society. When we're in tow, it uses about a tonne of coal an hour. So if we're pulling, like it famously saved a section of the Auckland Harbour Bridge during a storm. It was on a barge drifting away. And we're at full steam for 40 hours to try and stop that happening. So went through a massive amount of coal in that time. But actually it's relatively economical for ships of its size. So it's the last vessel of its type still operating anywhere in the world. Triple expansion engines, twin screws, vessel of its size, it's 34 metres long. It's quite a big ship in steam terms. The engines themselves, these beasts here, triple cylinders, 115 RPM seems a bit lazy, it looks like a sewing machine, but that's its peak power. It's 980 horsepower at the shaft for each of those engines. Most of its navigating is done on the engines. It's got a tiny rudder in proportion to the size of the ship, so it's not uncommon to have one engine full reverse and the other one full ahead when we're trying to berth it. And that's not foolproof. Even our best captain nudged the wharf the other day. There's a total of 15 different steam engines aboard, so there's always something for volunteers to do. There's little maintenance tasks. And yeah, it's as a piece of technology, it's quite a timepiece. It's really the end of steam. If it had been ordered maybe 4 or 5 years later, it would have been diesel. So for that reason, it's kind of unique to us. Interestingly, some of the choices that were made in buying it were just because there was the expertise available at the time to maintain steam engines. It's a bit different now. We're all the time training people and relying on 90-year-old people to come and help us out. So we've had a massive effort to understand what it is and how to look after it. Titan Engineering christened us Dad's Navy. They couldn't have a meeting with less than about 8 or 9 people from the Daldy, and that's one of the problems with charities and volunteers. You take what you can get. And so we've had people who were, I think in retrospect, we probably asked too much of too few people. People were stretched beyond their capability and making decisions they had no experience in. It's a major trap for a volunteer organisation. It's one of the reasons that we're converting to a trust, is that we can make appointments and deal with people as we need to. It's really, really hard with volunteers. A big issue obviously is survey requirements. So every 2 years we've got to have the thing out of the water. The biggest issue is actually hull thickness. We've never had an issue with the boilers. They're the original boilers. We've replaced a few fire tubes and stuff, but nothing major. Obviously hull thickness is an issue. It's a steel plate, 3/8 inch steel plate, 9.4 mil. The oldest plate is no problem at all. The stuff that was riveted above the waterline, no problem at all. It's the newer plate that's causing us all the grief. So last time we hauled it out, plate that we replaced in 2015, the welds had all been eaten away and the plate itself was suffering corrosion, which is really disappointing because we don't have money to spare doing things twice. So that is an issue. The other issue we've got at Devonport particularly is that there's a problem with current in the water out there. So we lost all our anodes when we pulled it out of the water this time, which is a massive amount of, well, I like to think of it as enrichment for fish. There are zinc-enriched fish out there. 2028, we have to take our prop shafts out. It's been 15 years. That's a massive thing in its own right. It's 60, 70K to withdraw the prop shafts and replace them. And it's a statutory requirement. There's little things. So over winter, we have a plan to lift the decking. The caulking's failed because some idiot keeps hitting it with a water blaster. And so we've got a corrosion issue under the decking. So there's always something happening with maintenance of the Daldy. And to be honest, half the team can't wait till we stop sailing because they want to get stuck into those things. Yeah, it's a reasonably serious issue. But as I say, Russ never sleeps. There's always something. So every Saturday morning, we can count on 5 or 6 people being over in Devonport just painting stuff or treating it with rust converter or doing things. We're having a minor inspection at the end of this year just to make sure that the corrosion we tried to arrest last time has actually been properly arrested. The society came to a bit of a crunch. I'd been involved with it since 2013 and I didn't want anything to do with the committee because it was fractious and it was Like I went to 2 meetings, I thought this is not for me. But I did all their photos and videos and stuff like that, and waited for the inevitable to happen. And it did. We had some issues in that we couldn't resolve within the society. There was half the people were diametrically opposed to continue sailing. They wanted to sink it. Our constitution actually says we have to offer it to the Maritime Museum as a prospective diving attraction, I presume. So there was a bit of an issue around that. But generally speaking, the society hadn't run on what I would call commercial rules, commercial basis. Lack of accountability was a big issue. We had a $75,000 donation that we couldn't account for. I mean, we knew what we'd spent it on, but we never told the sponsor. So a big issue around the transparency of the society, and that we're resolving by moving to a trust structure. So we need some external directors involved, and just basically to help us keep our keel in the water. It's a really important thing in those governance roles, because volunteer societies have a really proud history of running amok, and we can't do that again. Fuel is a contentious issue. I have more to say about that in a minute. We are running on coal, and the part of the work I did in putting together the operating manual for the Daldy was to understand the fueling of the ship, because we've got to be really careful what we tell our volunteers, because they'll go ahead and do it. And so if the idea is just shoveling more coal into the furnace, what you end up with is overfueling. We're wasting fuel, and we give off a lot of smoke. Not good things. So we did some research into that to understand it. We're largely smoke-free now. The worst part is when we're actually firing up. We fire over a 3-day period. We take it really, really slowly so that there's no issues with massive amounts of emission, and also don't want to stress the boilers. Community engagement is something we're crap at. A significant number of our passengers traditionally have come from things like railways associations and things like that, steam nuts. Perhaps not fair, but we have a lot of steam enthusiasts, and we don't engage with them at all. It was a surprise to us when a whole bunch of Australians wanted to jump on the Daldy prior to joining a 2-week expedition around the South Island, and apparently all the feedback was about the Daldy. So we've just been rubbish at it. And it's the same, I think, to some extent with the wooden boats. No one really sees the connection. But what I've been listening to is some of the same challenges that we have in terms of engagement, training, all those things. We understand that funding is going to be tied to community engagement. It's increasingly how the council looks at things. It's the steer that we got from Panuku. You need to, sharpen your act up. So there's a lot of work going on in that respect. We do actually have a program to bring our volunteers along in terms of qualifications, so formal qualifications. The one that applies, it'd be a MEC 5, Certificate in Mechanical Engineering, Step 5, and we are moving our volunteers towards that. The cut-off age, it must be about 80, I think. We've got people who won't do it, but in terms of attracting new volunteers, young volunteers, that's been critical. So we're finalising that shortly, and a lot of work went into understanding how we would train people to maintain the ship, because a lot of it is so complex, so unique, there's nothing you can find on the internet or anywhere. We used high-speed videography to understand how the steering works. We used all kinds of things to try and correctly identify the technology and maintenance and stuff required for it. So it's not or wasn't documented anywhere. So limited certifications will mean that people can gain a qualification for, let's say, an engineer on the Daldy, on what we call the inner harbour. So you know what that means better than I do. We also offer cold experience, and this is something we tried to get the museum interested in, and we did a bit of a song and dance with them a little while ago. We're going to do that again, but also volunteers over in Devonport. So the idea is that you could take a group of people around the ship and show the ship off while it's not in steam. So, it's about a half an hour it takes to do that. It's better when it's in steam, because 9 out of 10 people that get down to the engine room are there for life. They're volunteers. If they're not hypnotised by the engines, then they're not coming back. But I think the cold experience thing is a valuable way. This is tangible technology, and since November, we've been working quite hard. Actually, October we started working quite hard to get new volunteers on board. A surprising number of them are under 20. Our youngest is 12. These kids come on, there's nothing you can tell them about steam or ships or anything. They're the kind of people that research that. They don't bring devices on board. They haven't seen an iPhone or anything turn up on board. It's been amazing, because this is one of the few chances they get to engage in a hands-on basis with technology. And at the moment, because of our certification, they can go anywhere. So this is the stoke holdings, for example. This is the forward boiler, 3 furnaces. They can come down, they can stoke coal on a boiler. We give them 20 minutes of that and they're out for a break. But it's tangible technology, and they grasp it like you wouldn't believe. It's amazing. So yesterday, 4 of our 5 under 16s were out on the ship doing shipcraft, knots and all the bits and pieces that happen above deck, so I've heard. So yeah, it's really, really important, I think, to understand what that engagement looks like and how unique it is for young people. We can all kind of take it for granted, and I've been sort of mesmerised by STEAM since I was about 6, but for young kids coming on board, it's been a surprise to me what their grasp of it is like and how deeply it resonates with them. It's fascinating. So we do have a role, I think, in maintaining that perspective on the technology that powered the Industrial Revolution. There's very few working examples of anything like this anywhere. And this is the only ship of its type in the world. And only on this one can you get into the engine room. Everything else has been health and safety out of existence. So you can see it through the glass, but it's not tactile, right? You can't experience it the way you can on the Daldy. So that's a really important part of what we do. Every thermodynamic, anyone who burns anything for energy has got a problem, us included. So the configuration of the Daldy's boilers is a bit the same as any ship of its era. It uses a thing called a Howden forced draft system. So there's a massive fan up by the top blowing air through the furnaces. And it's really the key to efficiency. It was once so important that the British Navy declared that all ships needed to be retrofitted with it. It was just a massive performance boost. So we've got the optimum type of boiler for the kind of solid fuel that we've been using, obviously. We're now looking at torrefied wood, which is the stuff you can see over on the right there. That's waste wood product that's essentially condensed and heated to 300 degrees, and they turn it into these briquette things. The problem with it is, I mean, it sounds good, right? Wood from waste, energy from waste, brilliant. But a lot of energy goes into making waste wood into a product. So if you're looking at it from the circular economy point of view, I'm not really sure it's worth doing. I'm not sure that the energy input required to create those briquettes is equal to or a little bit less than what we get out of it. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. So there's a lot of science going into understanding what it is we're doing and is the net effect of benefit to the environment. Because the other issue is there's never zero collateral from burning something. So we could burn coal, we could burn hydrogen is probably the exception, but we're going to do that. So there's never nothing comes from burning. And we look at coal smoke and say, well, yeah, that's bad, and particulate emissions, people know that, and we get the smell of sulphur occasionally. But burning wood has its own toxicity issues. We're burning raw ethanol, effectively, in wood. So there's a lot of things to be considered in terms of looking at an alternative fuel. And it reminds me of the environmental movement seizing on diesels in the late 70s. I was at college, and Soichiro Honda said, I'll never produce a diesel engine as long as I live, and that's exactly what happened. But trading carbon dioxide for sulfur monoxide is a huge problem. When you look at a city now and you see that brown haze, that's diesel smoke. And so we've got to look in a holistic way about the specific impact of changing our fuel, and it is a bigger problem than just switching from one to the other. The biggest issue for our engineers is that we can't bank the fires. So with coal, you can sort of shut down the forced draft fan and close all the dampers, and the fire will still largely be there in the morning, and you just throw a bit more coal in it and away you go. We can't do that with the wood. It's all gone. On the plus side, it is all gone. There's no ash. We spent yesterday morning pulling all the ash out of the grates and cleaning up the boilers. So with torrefied wood, we don't have that. But I'm a bit anxious to understand what actually is in the smoke. And the other problem is there's no way that we can assess torrefied wood because we don't really know what goes into it. It's whatever the wood, the factory's producing at the time. So sometimes it's hardwood, sometimes it's softwood. There's a lot of variability. And any testing we do needs to be qualified by that factor. So this is not a simple problem to solve. It's a complex problem to solve. But we need to be transparent about how we're doing it. So what we're planning to do, I planned to do it in November, that didn't go anywhere. But what we're planning to do is take on enough of this wood, probably 2 or 3 tonnes, so that we can actually do comparison between one coal boiler, one wood boiler, and understand what the differences are in terms of consumption of wood per degree on the boilers. So the boilers run at 200 degrees at operating pressure. How quickly do we burn it? How much are we using? The fact that it's half the price of coal is largely due to carbon credits, but is it ultimately worth it? Coal's gone way up in the last 2 or 3 years, and it'll continue to climb, and we're not getting good coal. Most of what we got last time was sort of dust, and it just goes straight through the grate and contributes nothing to the heat of the ship. So the other issue with wood is that if it gets wet, it quickly unravels. So we have to make sure that the bunkers, which have traditionally been ventilated for safety, we now have to find a way of ventilating them that doesn't expose them to moisture. So, yep.
Your ash from the wood is the byproduct. Is there any use for ash?
No, very little ash from the wood.
Okay.
The coal, we got a lot of ash, and we have what we call clinker, which is the bits of coal that just don't burn. They're like little pebbles. But this stuff, there's literally not much left when it's burnt. The other ash, someone is making use of that. They're using it, mixing it with fertiliser and stuff, I believe. But yeah, so there's pluses and minuses. Historically, the Daldy was fitted with a feature where you could sort of turn on a valve and it would just blow the grates out into the sea. We can't do that anymore. There's a few things we don't do anymore, but that's one of them. So yeah, this fuel issue is probably the most important issue, and it's also the most contentious. Every time we talk about it, like at an AGM or something, there's a coal lobby. I just say it's steam tug, in that order, the fuel. And interesting, the Tug Littleton's putting electric heaters into their boilers. So they'll get their boilers up to about 85 degrees before they light any fires, which helps preserve the boiler, less stress. But ultimately, the most challenging time is when you're lighting up, when you've got small fires and large boilers, and consequently a bit of pollution. They're cold fires, so they don't burn properly.
That's tested, your emissions?
No. People look at us and say, well, that's dirty. It's part of the work we did in getting instructions together for stokers was that there were 3 or 4 versions of that around the ship, and every one was different. And I found a manual that the United States Navy did in 1941 that said that the best stoker, is 100% more efficient than the worst. And it's all about how you light the fire and how combustion actually takes place. So if you're over coaling it, in other words, layers and layers of coal, then you're going to get a lot of smoke and not actually much heat for that. It just burns, it's wasted. The idea is a low, flat fire. We're actually burning air, so it needs to get air through it. And at the back of the furnaces is where combustion takes place. So it's more or less complete if the temperature gets up to 2,500 degrees. So we could instrument the hell out of the combustion process and clean it up. And we've done a lot of work. Now that the stokers are working to the new instructions, it's a lot cleaner. It's very hard to see smoke now coming out of the Daldy, and we're really conscious of that. So during the tug race, we kind of buttoned off the boiler a little bit and full steam ahead. But so it's a big issue for us. But we kind of feel a bit isolated because elsewhere in the world, people are building brand new rail locomotives. There are new steam-powered boats being built, and we're struggling with this issue. Glenbrook doesn't really have an issue because they own the rail corridor. So we don't own the harbour. We missed that one. So the key ingredients to securing the future, you might be aware there was a lot of press. This was the first one, I think, in May 2023. And one of our captains expressed the inopportune opinion that without major funding, the Daldy would sink. What people read was the Daldy will sink. And so the Harbour Board said, well, we're not going to invest in a diving attraction. They were quite clear about that. And most of our sponsors shied away because the perception had been given, and they did basically the same article again in October. That in itself was almost responsible for sinking the ship, and it was he was on his own doing it, out on a limb, because we hadn't even talked about it at an AGM level. And the sad truth of it was that it was more of a reflection on the health of some of the people that had been serving as volunteers. There were health issues for Africa amongst the 8 or 9 people that were critical. So, being pragmatic about it, it was no coup, but I went to the AGM saying the Daldy has never failed the committee's failed the Daldy, and people got up and resigned in protest, and I thought, all right, that's my opportunity. So I'm now the president, I'm the comms officer, all things, which is a nightmare because it's literally almost a full-time job. If I hadn't been recovering from surgery, I wouldn't have taken it on. So again, we're looking at sponsorship. What we need is more accountability. If we go to someone and say we need to replace the boiler and it costs this much, then they can say they own the boiler and there's something they can talk about. But we can't talk in loose terms about needing 50 grand or whatever to keep running the ship. So we've got to be a lot more transparent. We've just assembled a list of priorities for the next 5 years of things that we know we need to do, aside from just keeping the water out. And there are some specific projects in there that we'll be looking for funding for. So I think it helps in terms of helping people identify with A, the problems we've got, and B, their role in fixing them. It's not, loosey-goosey, it all goes in a big hat and we'll keep going until we've spent it all. The public are important. We had 70 public donors last time through Give a Little, and we have people that have us on an automatic payment. So every month a little bit of money trickles in. But the perception that the Daldy was sinking was something we were unable to defeat at public level until it sailed again. So I went mental. I had 12 months really to get it repaired and back in survey, because if the ship ever fell out of survey and we tried to have it surveyed to new requirements, we'd be screwed. It's a bit like what happened to the Enslow. So the whole areas would have to be glassed off. It wouldn't be possible to walk through the back of the engine room or down into the engine room or any of the things that people really value about the Daldy now. So the battle's always been to make sure that the certification and the 1935 rules is current and anyone can go anywhere. And we want always for people to have that experience. It's tactile, it's tangible, you feel something's going to happen when you're in the Daldy and there's all this heat and steam, and so it's no surprise when the engine starts spinning. We're always recruiting and training volunteers, and I was for a long time the youngest volunteer, and I'm 64. So we had a big problem. The oldest is 91. And when you come on the Daldy, it does look a bit like Dad's Army. We've got to change the way that it looks. So we now have 4 or 5 people in that sort of 12 to 20 age range. And it's a massive help in recruiting other people, because they can share chocolate biscuits with each other, and they get to form a little group of their own, and it's immensely helpful, but we have to do more of it. Always looking for volunteers. The other thing, of course, is that moving to a trust structure, we need people who are able to be trustees, who are willing to contribute to the Daldy at board level and just basically help us keep our keel in the water. It's really, really important that there's governance and oversight and stuff, because I can't keep doing this forever. And no one governs me. I'm a kora of one. Which is good in one sense, but it's also terrible responsibility to have to make decisions on behalf of society funds. But I gambled. So my focus was on getting it back in the water, and we've been back in the water, I think, 8 days, and we got this call, could you handle 37 tourists from Australia? And so I just made the call that we would do it come hell or high water, because the thing that gets us the most attention is that yellow funnel going around the harbour. And straight away our engagement rates pick up on social media, and all the stuff that helps us bring passengers on starts working for us. So anniversary weekend we sailed on a Saturday. I think we had one of those trips, we had 3 passengers, hardly worth doing, except for the fact that if we don't sail, we're not relevant anymore. So there's a formidable amount of pressure just to keep out there. Fuel, I've talked about. Coal just keeps going up and up and up, and the quality keeps going down and down and down. I don't know where we're getting it from at the moment. Huntley people send us really nice emails about how they're going to get us the biggest nuts of coal and all sorts of stuff, and then we're shoveling dust. So the variability of coal would mitigate against it if nothing else was in play. But about half of what we spend on coal is carbon credits. So somewhere that needs to be noted. Operating income, we need over the 5-year period to make about 150k a year. Right? The cost of getting it in and out of survey, even if nothing major is wrong, is normally a couple $100,000. So it's an expensive ship to operate. The sea's actively working against us. We also need a sailing calendar. So I said this 12 years ago. We have to plan to sail and sail to plan. We need to let people know. A lot of our people that come on the Daldy have come specially from some distance. So it's no good them turning up. We get a lot of visitors from Australia for the Daldy. It's no good them turning up and us saying, oh, we're sort of down on numbers, we might not sail today. Can't do that. So we have to have a sailing calendar that people can count on to enable them to plan trips, plan excursions. So we need to integrate that with other groups of interest. So the rail enthusiasts is an obvious one. But there's tour operators in Australia and all sorts of places that we are working to get that calendar together. What we're trying to do is sail one weekend every month, where we do a Saturday afternoon sailing, Saturday evening sailing, which is lovely on the harbour, and then a Sunday sailing, and then we've got time to shut everything down and clean up a bit and get ready. So, but we need almost 2 crews of volunteers to do that. Previously they tried to sail every second weekend. That's just too much. We asked a lot of the volunteers. Strangely, they keep volunteering until they're literally unable, but we're doing a cheap deal on cremations. charters play.
Yeah, just how many volunteers do you need per trip then?
Okay, so last time we sailed with a crew of 18. So we had 6 stokers in total. And then you've got your deck crews, now 3 or 4 of those. We have a couple of captains. We can get away with around 12. But on 3-hour sailing, we have to have 2 engineers. So there's a few maritime rules come into play when you start extending your trips. But I think the 1.5-hour cruise we used to do, so we take off from Devonport, whiz around in front of the sugar, here's where your sugar comes from. It's kind of lost its novelty if it ever had any. And I think that the longer cruises, like the one we did for Queen Anne, 3 hours, catered meal, is really where it's at. People do get to experience it. And the feedback that we get on the bottom of the gangway is amazing. So, and no one normally knows I'm the president, so I'm saying there's no bias involved. Huge ups to our sponsors. Titan Engineering were amazing. We thought we were going pretty well, pushed the ship off the slipway on a Thursday night, and it sprung a leak straight away. So it had to come back up, and another $70,000 we didn't have needed to be spent on it to fix some failing plating on the bottom of the port bilge. So the challenge with it is that it was originally a riveted hull, and the repairs are obviously welded. And when the ship's in the water, it's all supported by water. When you put it on the slipway, everything is resting on the keel. So some errors with alignment occur, and we had something similar happen. Freemasons Foundation were amazing. When they heard about the Daldy, they chipped in with a significant donation, and we're really eternally grateful for them. Without that, we probably would be a diving attraction. Altex Coatings are really good. They chip in all the time. They provide technical support in terms of the coatings we use. They validate that we've applied them correctly and all that stuff, because that's important for insurance. Dunsford Marine, Kaz, I don't know if any of you have ever encountered him, but a unique personality doing a unique role as a volunteer on the ship. He doesn't charge us for his surveys or anything. And he's invaluable. He sails with the ship often enough that he's able to be an inspector of record for the ship, and it means stuff in maritime terms. So there's a tribute board on the Daldy with about 30 names on it, and it's like one of those Roll of Honour things. You know they're all dead now. We haven't had sponsorship from Ports of Auckland or Council or anything. So it's something we need to fix. We can't rely on these 4 guys every 2 years, but it's just indicative of where the market's at. Everything's tightened up and so forth. So part of this ESG thing I talked about, the environmental and social responsibility, is about being better engaged with the community, providing educational opportunities, all that stuff that council and so forth are keen to engage with. And it's no mean feat. One of the things I took on was publishing an owner's manual. So I consciously ripped off the Haynes manual design. There's heaps of original drawings and stuff in there, whatever the Maritime Museum could find for us, because we gave them all to archive and we're having trouble getting them back. But lots and lots of critical plans and stuff. So when the ship was in the water, we actually had the best account of where the anode should go, because it hadn't just eaten the anodes, it had taken the bolts off the hull and everything. It was a clean hull. There was no sign of where to deploy those, and it is quite a specific thing. But also training documents. So the current engineering qualification that we run, all the answers to the exams are somewhere in the manual. There was disagreement even about the height of water in the boiler. Someone says, as long as there's water in the glass, you're okay. Someone else said you need to run it at 3/4, and the American Navy said about half's good. So there's been a lot of work just to get everyone aligned on what these recommendations and stuff should be, and some resistance, which drives me nuts. But I ended up somewhere between the two extremes when we were putting all this together, so that we do have a valid training program now, and documentation that we can point to for taking volunteers through their MEC 5 examinations. So the future of the Daldy really rests with the extent to which we're able to regenerate our volunteer crews. We need those young, I look at them coming on board and they're 12 years old, and I think, well, we'll get another 12, 15 years out of them if we play our cards right. Eventually they get girlfriends and jobs and stuff, and it all gets a bit hard. But, we need to work to engage people, because as I say, once you've had them down, if we're in steam and you take them on the tour and you go through the stokehold and up into the engine room, they either never leave or you'll never see them again. There's no in between. People are not impartial. They come out of it either wanting to engage or never interested. So, and I think the same is probably true of most of the boats. We'd like to do a lot more with the Tangaroa, but it takes a bit more dedication, I think, than our volunteers have got to engage with the work they're doing there. That's a massive program. They're really in awe of them. But yeah, that's long and short of the William C Daldy. So anytime you see us advertising sailings and stuff, if you tell me you're part of the Wooden Boat Festival, we'll sort you out with a discount. But the support and the recommendations of the public are really what keep us going. Yeah, unsolicited recommendations from people that have been on board are powerful, really powerful. We don't know what the advertising medium is. Newspapers never really worked for us. Bus advertising was weirdly successful. Facebook kind of wanes. Some people have never had it. Other people are giving it up. So part of our challenge is finding a way to market what we're doing. But we sailed recently with the Queen Anne. It was the first time we've had a full complement of passengers in 4 years. So, and we're still sailing at 4-year-old prices. So the idea was to fill the ship and then worry about pricing it properly. So we're on the way. It hasn't been a great year for income because we didn't know we would even be sailing until November. And then I thought, oh my God, I didn't think about that. We got the ship back in the water. How are we going to pay for coal and where will we go? So we're at the start of that journey to self-sufficiency. But the big part of it is getting away from the volunteer structure. Nothing wrong with the volunteers, but volunteers will do first and do best what they believe is important in the moment. So big part of it is coming on board and giving them a bit of a leadership speech and just saying, listen, this is what we need to do and here's why. So someone posted a photo of the toilets on the tug, which are 1935 vintage. We're very proud of them. Completely original. But obviously in the context of modern times, not perhaps what people expect. So there's those sorts of things. If you just explain it to them, stuff happens. You don't have to manage it, and you can't manage it. You can't tell a volunteer what to do. They're inclined to tell us why they're there. So we need to turn that on its head a bit and make sure that we are able to make key appointments. At last year's Wooden Boat Festival, I implored this guy, Ken Poynton, who's 80-something, to be our chief engineer. I said, this is really important that we get this list of priorities, that we know what to fund, how to manage it. But I can't do that, and, his son might step up, I don't know. But all those elements I talked about before, the volunteers, key ingredient. Sorting our fuel situation out is a key ingredient. We're not being held to a ransom exactly, but we are tied up at a wharf where we cannot take coal. The wharf won't handle a truck. So we've got to go somewhere else for coal, and then we run into issues with Panuku. You can't use Halsey Wharf and what's his name's leased the other one for 35 years or something stupid. So we've got issues. We can't pick passengers up. People that come in from overseas have then got to take a Devonport ferry to go on the Daldy. It's nuts. So we have to find a way through it. And the current challenge will be finding a permanent berth. There's one at the back of the museum, but they want us to board only from the back end of the ship, which we can't do. We've got steering gear and all sorts of problems at the back of the ship. We can't ask people to climb any higher and then down again. The current gangway doesn't work. So we're just always negotiating for someone with something. And it's just a question of getting it in a position where our future's assured. We've got a berth that we can use to take passengers and fuel, which we have to load from both sides of the ship. There's bunkers either side of the engine room. It's not something we can do from the back of the ship at all. So, anyone that has any ideas, just info at Daldy. But I'm encouraged by the fact that there are so many old boats. I love the boat festival. I don't have much to do with boats or woodworking necessarily. That's okay, sir. I've got one for you. But it's encouraging that we need people with woodworking skills. We need people who are sailors. We don't have a lot. Our biggest issue at the moment is one of our captains is retiring, and we kind of hope the other one will. But we need a skipper. They're irascible. Like, the hard thing with volunteers is a captain is often, key in the ship. And if they're one of those command and conquer guys, we really have problems with volunteers. So we've got 2 captains who can't be on the same boat together. One of them's going, so we've got a vacancy, and the other one is kind of a crisis of management. So it's at every level we need people who are interested in the Daldy. If you just want to turn up and rock the controls and you're 500 tonnes qualified, awesome, talk to me. I'll provide you with plenty of chocolate biscuits and catered meals. But the future rests on all of those things. There's not anything we can leave out. So we're appealing to people who who have all kinds of interests in marine industry to think about how you might be able to contribute to the success of the Daldy. So, yeah, thanks very much for
Really cool.
hearing me out. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for John?
The coal, the
Yeah.
source of it. We were leaving out high quality coal in the ground, and we were importing
Rubbish.
nasty from the Philippines.
Yeah,
That impacted on you?
totally. The coal we need really is coking coal. So it burns more completely, burns slower, burns hotter. The dust does not help us at all. You can have a guy shoveling all day we did. So last time we raised steam on January, or anniversary weekend, the first sailing we did on a Saturday, we had guys down there all morning trying to get the boilers up to temperature because the coal was rubbish. And I guess that's because the rubbish floats to the bottom. So it improved a bit for the tug race, but we're afraid to throw too much on in case people are always taking photos of black smoke coming out the funnel. And I've never actually photoshopped it out, but I'm calling it part of history. The stuff that we've done around our stoking protocols has made the biggest impact on our environmental footprint of anything. But we'll never convince people that black fuel's a good idea. So if we could get good, reliable West Coast coal the way we used to, Huntley doesn't know where it comes from. It comes up in rail cars, they drop it out on the side of the track. The things they tell us about selecting, it's like Brazilian chocolate. We select only the best nuts and please.
We were really excited, and I know Michelle worked really hard at having William C Daldy as part of our Wooden Boat Festival.
Yeah.
And we think it's an integral part of Auckland's maritime history and its future. So we're really looking forward to that happening next time that you're right in the festival with us.
We really want to be. I mean, here's the thing. When I listened to one of the lectures this morning, I was back here earlier, that you've got skills we need, we've got skills that some of you need. We've got amazing workshop facilities at our disposal at Glenbrook or at Colonial Energy and up in Wangapara. There's a lot of skills that are native to our team that perhaps other people would struggle with. So if you need stuff cast, fittings made, all that sort of thing, we know how to do that. The seamanship stuff, seamanship, we're a little bit loose with that. We're teaching 12 and 13-year-olds who can't hold the ropes how to knot them. So it's a challenging time for us, but I feel it's a period of transition because if we're good at replenishing our volunteers, if we can work with younger people, it'll become a more attractive proposition, but we need to be better integrated with the likes of the wooden boat people. We're not wood, I'm just asking for a pass on that. We burn a bit of wood.
Classic vessel.
Exactly, yeah, but it is a classic vessel problem and it applies to all kinds of classic transport. So, our community outreach has been crap, and at the moment it's only me, so there's a limit to what I can do. But we do need to be more tightly wound because I think we've all got interests in common. The things you talked about earlier about coordinating between Wellington and Lyttelton, so they want me to go and do a manual for the tug Lyttelton now, and God help me. But those things are happening. We've had to work together because the environmental issue won't go away. And collectively we might be able to resolve it if we can prove that we're doing as much as we can to mitigate impact without it actually changing fuel. I'd like to see us better integrated, but I think we need people out of your camp and some people out of our camp. We need to cross paths somewhere. And so far I've only found one of our guys that even owns a yacht. So, and I suspect it's concrete. So thank you very much for your attention. It's been great.
John, thank you. Fantastic. Yeah, we've watched the William C Daldy over the years, and fatigue can set in, and it's fantastic to now hear about everything that you've taken on and the changes. Like, we're not any good with manuals and things, so as you say, there is definitely a crossover, and we are hoping while it is the Wooden Boat Festival, it's classic vessels, that we can bring people together a bit more and we can share, look at sharing resources and things. Here's a gift just to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. Excellent.
Thanks very much.